So I've been at this for about 17 years, teaching this, and I'm going to tell you all how that all got started. But
what are we teaching?
Well, this is the first of 7 talks, and this one is the Dietary Foundation, and these talks are called The Big Picture Health, and it is because I'm going to give you all the big picture and cover all the different aspects of what we need to do to maintain optimal health. And everything, to make changes, it's best to make one change at a time. If you start trying to make too many changes all at once, then it's just a recipe for failure. So it's one change at a time. So I'm putting the most important change right here up front to get started with. And just to let you know, so what we're going to be covering is today's the Dietary Foundation. Then we're going to have the GI health next week, and that's especially for people who have GI issues. I mean, it's for everybody, but it's really helpful for people that do have GI issues, and especially trying to transition to a more plant-based diet can be challenging for people with GI issues. So then breath, joy, and water, also extremely important. Outdoor living, we're designed for it, very important. Microbiome health, mental health, and move your body. So all of these things are vitally important, and I want to share all of it with you right now, but I can't. And so I have to try. There's so much. There's just so much. Okay, so let's just get started. My story. And I follow my notes because I can go off, and I could talk all afternoon into the night. I had a very serious horseback riding accident. Some of you all know this story. First of all, I want to just say that because I'm not charging for this, in the past I've charged for a lot of the stuff that I do, and I'm just not doing that anymore because it eliminates a lot of people that wouldn't be able to do it. And there are all these strategies like, well, if you don't charge, people won't do it because they have to pay something and they have to feel some pain to be able to do it. I'm not going with that anymore. I am a Christian. That's what I live my life for, and that's why I do what I do, because I have had an encounter with Jesus, who I call him by his Hebrew name, Yeshua. That's how I became a Christian, and so everything I do is because that's what he has me do. So it's really not me doing it, it's him doing it. Because if it were just me doing it, I wouldn't be doing it, okay? I mean, that's just the way it is. But I do believe that he is in me now, and he does move this body around and get it to do what he wants it to do, and that's because of the accident, only because of the accident. I had a horseback. I was a very headstrong person. I had been a model in New York City and in Europe, and so I pretty much learned to get my way in life. I was an abused child. I was neglected as a child. So all of a sudden having physical attractiveness was a power. I was a very power-starved person. So that kind of gave me this false power that I jumped on and used it because it was my way to survive. And so I was a very headstrong person. I was a very narcissistic person. And even though I had become a believer about almost 20 years prior, I was still just didn't get it completely. I mean, I just couldn't. I was a very damaged person. And so I was living in Los Angeles, working in the film industry, working on a film project. And I trained horses because I always had horses growing up, but then I couldn't afford my own horses, so I trained other people's horses. And I was training a horse, a young horse, thoroughbred, that reared up, came over backwards, came on my pelvis, and I had a little issue with that horse earlier in the day, and it hit the horse. And so the horse came over on me. He threw himself backwards. He didn't just rear up. I mean, he threw himself backwards and shattered my pelvis. I was up on the Santa Monica Mountains, and I had to be airlifted out. I had to be left alone while my riding partner went to get help. And I had another come to Jesus meeting up there on that mountain because I had a fatal death blow. I knew I was going to die. I knew I was dying. I felt the impact Had no pain though. I called out to God and said I couldn't take the pain, and the pain did go away. It was interesting because I could feel where I had been injured. I knew exactly where I had been injured. I could feel that. And I had to be airlifted out, and that I remember on that mountain, that was the hardest part of it. I mean, it was so, I realized I was going to die, that I was dying, and I remember I kept going, this is it. This is it. This is it. This is it. I mean, this is it. It's over with. This whole life that I had lived kind of unconsciously was just over with. I was going. And it wasn't hurting. And I ended up singing. I knew that I had to get ready to go to heaven, and I had to get ready to meet my Maker. And so I was trying to prepare myself, and I could see that I had really screwed up a lot. And so I didn't know what else to do, so I started singing, and I couldn't even think of all the words to hymns. I remember singing "Jesus Loves Me" and "Onward Christian Soldiers," those what I knew of it, and I just sang those, and I sang them over and over again. Well, finally they came. Our riding partner came back. Paramedics came, and it was a wild experience. It was an absolutely wild experience. I had a miraculous healing in the ICU between the first and second CAT scan, and unbelievable things happened. I mean, unbelievable spiritual things happened that I don't even talk that much about it because it's hard to describe them. But things went on in the trauma unit, and then they transferred me. It was on Labor Day weekend, and so there weren't any rooms in ICU, so they transferred me to the cardiac unit, gave me a 24-hour nurse. And I'd had to have an angiogram, and I had 14 pelvic fractures. I had 2 crushed arteries. I had a fractured sacrum. I had internal injuries. And so I was having to get lots of transfusions, and they had to plug up the 2 arteries. And if they weren't able to, that was an emergency procedure. If they weren't able to do it, I was going to bleed out. I was dying. They couldn't transfuse enough blood into me because I was bleeding out so fast. And I was very calm throughout this whole thing, and I had some very interesting experiences. I spoke to doctors and I believe a nurse, where God just spoke through me, and I thought a lot about this. I told them things about themselves, and I thought a lot about it later and thought, I was in such a state where everything had been removed. I could just be kind of a vessel that God could say what he needed to say to certain people, and it came out of my mouth, and it was wild because I was just kind of watching this stuff. And so then after that, I was transferred to the UCLA rehab facility, and I was in rehab, and it was a really tough place. We had shared rooms, and it was pretty scary. And I had no family there. I had nobody there. It was just me, because as I said, I came from a very neglectful and kind of abusive family, and so they didn't bother to come when I was in the hospital. And we didn't know if I was going to live for 3 days. So then, while I was there in the rehab facility, there was a prescription that I needed at that time that I was taking, and the pharmacist wouldn't give it to me. So there was this whole thing going on with the pharmacist, the nurses, and I had been panicking the whole time I'd been there. It was really scary to be in this hospital, not have the use of my legs, and I was really panicking. And then I was lying there, and I was buzzing, hitting that buzzer for the nurses and stuff, and finally I heard a voice, an internal voice, and it said, "Stop it. Stop it." It said, "You have panicked your whole life, and now if you continue to do it, you really will die. So stop it. Stop laying on the buzzer for the nurses. If you will pray, I will fight your battles." Well, I heard this voice, and I was, this is weird. Who is this? What is this? And I thought, well, I'm in pretty bad shape here, so I went ahead and chose to listen to the voice. And so I just stopped panicking and everything. It said, lay off the buzzer. And then the voice said, ask the nurses about themselves. They work 12-hour shifts. They are exhausted. Ask them about their lives. And, I'd never thought to do that. It was all about me and pushing that buzzer and getting what I needed. And so I was like, okay, let's start start doing this. So I got quite well interested in this. The nurse comes in and she says, I've had it with this pharmacist. She's been doing this too long. And she said, I'm calling your doctor. Well, I got everything I needed then. And believe me, I started asking those nurses about their lives and everything, and things began to change. Things really began to change. And so I had a lot of experiences like that. And then I knew that this was what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to be teaching what I teach. And I have like almost a photographic memory for this stuff. And so that's kind of the part about my story and how I came to be doing all of this. Because I had interest in nutrition, but nothing like what I'm doing now. So basically we live in a matrix, and everybody here knows this, and you know it to some degree or another. And there is the pharmaceutical matrix. There's the chemical matrix, chemical companies, and they are over everything else. And I had the luxury, because I went to live with Dr. Fuhrman. How many of you all know who Dr. Fuhrman is? Okay. Dr. Fuhrman is a world-renowned medical doctor who's one of the pioneers of the whole plant-based movement. And he's treated his patients with nutrition and nutritional means. And he weans them off of pharmaceuticals and a whole bit. And he's been doing this since, I think almost 30 years now. And so I went and I had a situation where it was basically dictated to me a business plan, because I read his book, Eat to Live, and I started eating that way, and it started helping me because I had terrible GI problems after the accident. And I started getting some relief. So I woke up one morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I got dictation of a business plan for him. And I presented it to him. I sent it to him. Well, he and his wife had me move in with them at their house and help them develop their new business, which is what he's doing now. And he's had his own PBS show and so forth. So while I was at his clinic, I was still, into pharmacy. All I knew was the medical industry. I had been going to doctor after doctor after doctor on proton pump inhibitors and different things for my GI problems that I had that started after the accident. And I was working, so I went to live with them, and then I became his dietary assistant. So it was my job to coach the patients and teach cooking classes. Well, I got to actually see people reverse all these diseases like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and all this stuff right in front of my eyes. So I couldn't, I had faith, and not everybody has this opportunity. You can read a book, but then you're sick and you got these problems, and you're thinking, well, maybe I need to take the medicine, or I need to go to this doctor or whatever. Well, I got to see it, and so I ended up getting faith from that. And then as I've done this, and as I've eaten this way, I've become clearer and clearer and clearer. My mind has become much clearer because it was very foggy. I was on a lot of drugs. I was on a lot of psych drugs. I had been diagnosed as bipolar when I was 22, so I was on lithium, and I was on Zoloft and all kinds of things. And so, I got off all of this, and then I was eating like this, and the clarity started coming, and that's when I really started to, I saw this matrix. And when I saw the matrix, I really got it, taking the red pill, which opens your eyes to what's really going on. And so then I traveled deeper down the rabbit hole, and I really began to see the corporate greed, corporate rule, and the corporate monetary system that runs everything, literally everything. And so the chemical industry, which is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, has underneath it big pharma, processed food, and the medical industry. Not to mention, and I'm not even going to go into all the other stuff. This is just this right here, because that pertains to what we're talking about. So I had teachers. I met very spiritual giants that kind of helped me farther along the path. And believe me, I'm still struggling and to leave this matrix behind. And so leaving the matrix basically is not participating in anything that we're not designed for. That's huge. That's big. So what we're going to do here is we're just chipping away at it, starting to chip away and do one thing at a time. If you know, like in Genesis, and one of the reasons when I charge, I don't talk about any of this spiritual stuff or Christian stuff or any of that stuff, because I don't want to offend anybody, but now I don't really care. So in Genesis 1:29 talks about that I have given you, the first command was to eat the plant foods. That's in Genesis. That's when everything's ideal. We're commanded to eat the plant foods. It was after the flood that we were told we could eat animal products. And that's, of course, because there probably wasn't much to eat. And then there was even a thing in the Bible where the quail, when they're in the desert for 40 years, and they are whining and complaining about how they missed the fish and the leeks and all the wonderful things back in Egypt, which they hated Egypt when they were there, but now they want to go back, and they're complaining because they don't have meat. And then God rains all this quail down on them, and the quail was the dead quail this high all around them for miles, so they couldn't get away from the dead quail. And he said, now eat your meat until it comes out your nostrils. So it wasn't I don't think it was a very positive thing. A lot of people interpret it as positive, but it sounds to me like it's not very positive when you really think about it. Quail up to your waist, dead quail, I mean, and until it comes out your nostrils, that sounds kind of sarcastic to me.
Aversion therapy.
Yes, exactly, aversion therapy. Very good, Mark. So anyway, what I found out is that another thing is matrix shuts down our protective intuition, impairing our ability to discern truth. Now, if anybody gets hot in the sun, you can move your chair back to the shade. So being able to discern truth, so many people are looking for the truth, and they're duped by so many different things that the matrix puts out there, because we don't have the ability to discern truth anymore. And the way this happens is that when we're small children, I can give you an example. If you're a small child and you're with your mother, small children have intuitive knowing. And you're with your mother or your father, and somebody comes along, and you're afraid of that person. You don't know why. You're just not comfortable with them. You don't want to look at them. You want to hide behind your parent. And the parent says, now come on, Johnny, you come out here, and you say, now come on, don't be rude. You need to say hello and shake hands with this person and look them in the eye. Right now you're denying that child's intuitive knowing that there's something not quite right with this person. As we know, there's a lot not quite right with a lot of people. And so what you're doing is you're shutting that child down. And it's many different things like that is how our intuition gets shut down. So now, like an animal knows. An animal knows when somebody's not okay, when something's not okay. But we don't. So therefore we believe every lie that comes down the pike that kind of sounds good, you know, some truth mixed with some false stuff to make money off of. So you've got all these diets, different diets out there. And there's truth in all of them, but then they leave out the damaging things. Like, I mean, you can take we're going to get into statin drugs in a minute. So anyway, that leaves, so what happens is when you don't have the discernment, when you can't discern the truth, that you know you're vulnerable, and that leaves us anxious. So these are just some of the things that contribute to anxiety, is not knowing the truth. Whereas if you have this intuitive, you're back in touch with this intuitive nature, you're not as anxious. Okay, so the school of life is basically truth or consequence learning. It's all set up on cause and effect education. And one of the things you always have to ask is this working? Is this working? You know, you're trying a new diet, you're trying a new drug, you're trying something. Is it working? And so many people keep taking these things and doing these things, and it's not working, but they keep thinking it's going to work. I'm speaking for myself because as I said, I've been to 11 gastroenterologists. I've taken many different pharmaceuticals. I've tried many different things. So I'm speaking from experience, and then now observation, watching other people do the same thing I did, because we're all very similar. So here's what pharmaceuticals do. Pharmaceuticals manipulate essential enzyme activity. We have, this is right here on front, this is a book I wrote, which I was just looking at, and it's pretty good because it's an easy book, it's an easy read. I haven't looked at it in a long time, but I looked at it today. And this was my co-author, Dr. Cooey, and he was a professor at Baylor University. He was a professor of anatomy, physiology, and nutrition. and very brilliant guy. And he writes, his specialty was he was a cell physiologist, and enzymes were his specialty. And here's what he says about enzymes. Because enzymes are extremely important. They run the show in our bodies. Okay, enzymes are responsible for every chemical reaction in our body, every one of them. Without enzyme reactions, you could not move, think, or feel. They make everything needed in the body, everything. That's how important enzymes are. So what pharmaceuticals do is they manipulate our enzymes, because certain enzymes are doing certain things, and so the pharmaceutical they'll make a drug that will interfere with that enzymatic activity. So let's just take statins, for example. What's cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, is when you have inflammation in your body, LDL cholesterol is going to rise. The way they came up with this thing that LDL cholesterol was the enemy was that there were correlation studies. They're causation studies and they're correlation studies. A causation study is where they show this causes this. A correlation study is, okay, all these people had high LDL, or most of these people had high LDL that had heart attacks. So there's a correlation. It's correlated with the people with heart attacks. So now what we know is that with LDL rises when you have inflammation in your body, because LDL has all kinds of properties, antioxidant properties. It kind of can come in and tries to repair the problem. But if you don't fix the problem, the LDL can keep rising or can stay at that high level. But so rather than looking at what the problem is that's causing the LDL to rise, they just assume it's going to cause a heart attack. So what we have to do is we have to stop that LDL. It's like if you've got in your car, check engine light comes on, and you go to the dealer, and they just, we'll fix that, and they just shut off the check engine light, but the engine's still got something wrong, and it finally just, blows up or whatever. So the statin drugs, these statins, what they do is they come in and they interfere with the production of LDL. So now this thing that's trying to help your body and trying to fix your body is they're turning that off. And so then, and it doesn't, there's no evidence that it reduces heart attacks. It just might prolong how, because yes, it does. When it gets in there, you do get the plaque, and the plaque can get infected and cause a stroke or heart attack or whatever. But there's really no evidence that it reduces the risk of heart attacks even down the road. So it might just keep it from happening down the road, but in the meantime, it's interfering with all these other enzymatic activities. So then you have achy joints, maybe your hair starts falling out, you don't feel good. So yes, maybe it can keep you from, you can continue the same bad habits and perhaps prolong having that heart attack, but you're going to feel miserable from the time you start the statins until you have that final heart attack if you don't stop. Yes?
Is that the same with proton pumps?
Well, proton pump inhibitors, yes, that's another big problem, and I go a lot into that with our GI health, but I'll explain it to you. Proton pump, okay, the stomach acid, our acid in our stomach, that protects you from bacteria and pathogens. You want a good, nice, acidic stomach. Then, not only does it do that, once it digests, and it needs to digest the food to make this bolus, and so once it does that, and it goes into your small intestine, that acid tells your pancreas, whoa, we've got too much acid in here. Pancreas will produce sodium bicarbonate, it will produce enzymes, it'll immediately come in and fix that. And then the liver starts producing bile, and the gallbladder starts producing lipase, and all of this stuff, it triggers all of these other organs to do the digestive work, which you need. So when you take a proton pump inhibitor, it reduces the acid, Therefore, you are more vulnerable to pathogens. Your pancreas will not work as efficiently, nor will your gallbladder, nor will your liver. And then downstream, then all of a sudden you start having gas, maybe loose stool, constipation, loose stool, and all these other symptoms downstream. The problem's not here, the problem's up here.
But if your acid comes back up in your esophagus.
Yes. Okay, there's another, well, I know there are different things because you can have a hiatal hernia too. So, okay, so the acid also triggers the pylori sphincter muscle to close. If you don't have enough acid, that won't close. It can stay open. So, but a person who has a hiatal hernia, that can be difficult. It depends on how big the hiatal hernia is. One that's like 1 centimeter is usually, do you know what size yours is?
Medium.
It's a medium, so it's probably bigger than 1 centimeter, maybe 1.5 centimeters or something. So there are some procedures, well, not for the hiatal hernia, and some of those procedures are horrible. Yeah, you do have to eat. This diet will help a lot. This will help a whole lot because it's not as acidic of a diet. And so the proton pump inhibitors, I'm not sure. Let's see, there are doctors, and that's one of the things I do because I'm not a doctor, is I do know of doctors that specialize in different things, good doctors that will do telemed and stuff like that. So you can, and I know of one in Oklahoma City named Dr. Lampkin that helps with that as well. And then when we get into a little down the mental health, and okay, the mind can heal your body. I mean, you all have heard this, Norman Cousins and all this stuff. Yes, it can heal the body. It can make it healthy. It can heal, sphincter muscles and all kinds of stuff. But it's being able to get in there and tap into that mind, because our programming is such that we don't believe deeply that our mind can do this. So that's something you have to really work on and pray on and all of that. But I was going to tell you something about this. I just had it about the sphincter muscle. Well, hopefully it'll come back. The mind can heal the body. Oh yes, rebounders. Do you have a rebounder? Do you know what a rebounder is? It's a little trampoline. And you can drink some water, which, so that it fills your stomach, and then you just gently bounce on that trampoline, and that will mechanically start to pull. I'm not saying it's going to fix it, but it might, and it might help a lot. It might not. You have to try it. And it's good for you anyway, because it's good for lymphatic drainage. You don't want to do a whole lot, because if you have herniated discs, it can aggravate that. But if you do gentle, and if you don't do it a whole lot, you just get on there and you bounce, and you can feel it pulling that stomach down, because you want to drink, a good bit of water to do it, not violently, but enough so that you can feel that something's happening, and do that several times a day. Do it, especially when you feel the acid, and that can help, because you can see mechanically what that would do. Okay, so anyway, the diet, this is the foundation for life. This is why I go into this first. Do you think I should wake him up?
No.
Okay.
Sometimes they can hear when their eyes are closed.
I didn't want you to think I was asleep, but I was thinking about closing my eyes too, just
Yeah.
to listen.
If we snore, what happens?
Mark, we need to bring a bamboo, that one of our pieces of long bamboo, so I can poke people when they start.
Yardstick, maybe.
Yeah.
Old-fashioned yardstick.
Right.
Have a thought.
Just
Sometimes
tap
they
them on
can
the
hear
hand.
very well when they're.
No, I
as
know
they're
he
shut.
does that, and I'm like reading and stuff to him, and
Yeah.
he'll say, "I'm just
My son does put
closing."
you
I said, "No,
asleep.
you're asleep." He goes, "No, I'm listening." Because if I close my eyes, I'm
He
not
picks a good
listening.
spot though,
Yeah,
right
we
there.
can
You
all-
could just kind of poke him every once
Is
in a
this
while.
boring what I'm talking
No,
about? Okay, I want to make sure. Okay.
No,
Just don't pay any attention to the
Yeah.
ones
Okay.
that fall
It's real
asleep.
comfortable out here. We're all relaxed.
And these
Yeah,
You don't need
and the
anything
sun
for
feels
stress.
good.
And these
Yeah. chairs,
they're really comfy.
they are very
We need
comfortable.
some uncomfy chairs.
No, don't say that.
Well, I even thought when it's dry, maybe bringing quilts out here.
Oh, that'd be cool.
People bring
I
their
actually
quilts,
have a bunch of quilts in the store that we could use.
something everybody can lie down and
Yeah.
go to sleep.
Oh well, we don't want to do that.
Okay. So anyway, this is the foundation. This is the first part of everything, and it's a organic, whole food, plant-forward diet. So we are fearfully and wonderfully made. I mean, we are amazing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. The body is a miraculous self-healing machine. It is designed to heal itself. If we supply it with optimal nutritional environment for healing. But you gotta give the body what it needs, just like you gotta give a car what it needs. That optimal nutrition is an abundance of micronutrients and adequate, but not too many macronutrients. Now I'm going to go into micronutrients and macronutrients. Macronutrients and micronutrients. People don't consume enough vital micronutrients. Those are vitamins, minerals, and plant nutrients. Antioxidants would be in there, all kinds of plant compounds. Those are your micronutrients. They don't have calories. And where do they come from? Do you all know where the micronutrients come from?
Walmart?
Well, they can come from Walmart.
Suzanne.
Oh,
They can come
sorry.
from they can come from Suzanne's.
From all the really colorful fruits and vegetables.
That's right. That's right. So macronutrients. Macronutrients are your fat, protein, and carbohydrates. They have calories, and you need those. But you don't need too many of those. You need the adequate amount, because you get too many of those, you gain weight. You don't get enough, you lose weight. And the reason I am so thin is because I have a hard time getting enough macronutrients, because I have so many food sensitivities ever since this accident that I can only eat cooked vegetables, beans, and seeds, and some nuts. And so it's hard, and my pancreas no longer produces enzymes, so I have to take special enzymes. But because of that, I can't consume large quantities of food. So I'm probably living on I'd say I live on anywhere between a 700 and 1,200 calorie diet a day. Now, I've been living on this since 2009 or 2006. And I mean, do I look unhealthy? I look very thin, but do I look unhealthy? I mean, so I'm just telling you, I have tons of energy. So a lot of the stuff that we read and the RDA and all this stuff, it's not true. It's not true.
How come it messed up your digestive system? Because of the antibiotics?
Well, I took a lot of antibiotics as a kid, and which we will go into later. Abuse, any kind of abuse, especially in childhood, early childhood, and I did take, and my mother was very mentally ill, and so that sets certain patterns, and and when you get stressed, it's called fight or flight. It's called fight, flight, or freeze. You've got the autonomic nervous system, and that's this nervous system that is what you don't control. So there's parasympathetic, sympathetic, and sympathetic is when you're in fight, flight, or freeze. So when you're a little child and you're kept in a state of fight, flight, or freeze, which you're not supposed to be, it sets certain aberrated patterns in your brain. And so when you're in that state, it takes away all of your energy, and your blood flow leaves your vital organs right through here and goes to your muscles, and it also leaves your brain. It goes to your muscles and prepares you to be able to fight or run or whatever you have to do. And so when you stay in that state, you have learning disabilities. You don't, and so it takes away from your digestion. If a lion's chasing you, you don't need to be digesting your food, because digestion takes a lot of energy. So you need for that digestion to go to your muscles so you can flee. But when you stay in that state, that means your digestion is impaired, your thinking is impaired, and that pattern gets set in little children. That's why it's so important how we raise our children. It's so important. So anyway, that was one thing, and then the accident was just a compounded trauma on top of it, and at that point I don't know, maybe I have scar tissue. They really don't know exactly what's wrong.
Blood transfusion.
I had a lot of blood transfusions. Maybe my pancreas did get injured. I don't know. But anyway, I have been able to survive. I would be dead if I didn't eat this way. So you think about somebody like me, and it doesn't matter what age you are. It's going to take off years of your life. You're going to reverse the aging process. Literally, they can see it. They can look at your telomeres in different ways. They can measure the aging process and how old you are biologically. You can reverse that and take that back, where they can test you, do a baseline test you, and then you can go back 6 months later, a year later, and you're going to be younger, biologically younger.
I have a friend who gets, every time she gets under stress, she gets a bladder infection.
Exactly.
Every single time.
Yep. And that is
That stress just
yep.
eats away, yeah.
It triggers so many things. Okay, so antioxidants reduce stress damage from environmental toxins, stress, poor nutrition, all kinds of stuff. And that's like rusting in the body. It's the same thing as rusting in the body. And so the antioxidants, do you all know where the antioxidants come from? I know Suzanne does. And Mary does too.
Suzanne.
And so does Mark. So do you know where the antioxidants come from?
Fruits?
Yes, one thing. There are other things.
Green.
Greens. From fruits and vegetables. The colors in the fruits and vegetables are made up of from antioxidants. That's why a purple cabbage has certain antioxidants. A red apple or tomato has certain, like lycopene. It's been so long since I taught this now I can't even remember the words. Lycopene, anthocyanins, I believe, are in the purples and the blueberries and the cabbages.
The darker the color.
The darker the color, the more antioxidants you've got. So that's where they come from. And those things are what stop the rust inside us. Okay, so you can reduce risk and even reverse many chronic and infectious diseases. And as I said, I saw it. I watched it at Dr. Fuhrman's. Optimal micronutrients, antioxidants, and appropriate macronutrients make a strong immune system. One basic diet with a few individual variations, because everybody comes to this at different levels of damage. And so if people have the GI issues, then I have to help them come up with a diet that they can eat, because when you haven't eaten all this fiber, sometimes it can be hard on your system to transition, and I help people slowly transition. But people that don't have GI issues can usually jump right in. Okay, so what it does is it protects against cancer and infectious diseases, keeps blood vessels open and uninflamed for great blood flow. It allows unobstructed blood vessels to move oxygen and nutrients into the brain. That means you get clearer, and it can reverse some symptoms of dementia. It can pretty much halt the progression of dementia. It doesn't reverse Alzheimer's, but it can slow it down, and it can halt the continued progression of it.
I probably better finish reading it. I have a long drive home.
Oh, okay.
And I have a husband that's, I ran off and left.
Okay.
But I will be back.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, yeah, we'll keep on.
Okay.
So that's cardiovascular. Oh, wait, that was, oh yeah, so, and it feeds an optimal gut microbiome, which we all need, because I'm sure you all know how important that is. And fiber from whole plant foods enable proper digestion. So it works like for cardiovascular, and it's the same diet for all. Basically, you don't have to do a separate diet for cardiovascular, obesity, cancer, osteoarthritis. I mean, there's certain things in each one of them you can read, like it quiets, strengthens, and modulates the immune system for autoimmune. Osteoarthritis provides bioavailable calcium from dark leafy greens, reduces inflammation. So you can read COVID and flu, anxiety and depression, protein toxicity. You know, you read how everybody says protein is so important. No, you ask any doctor, have you ever seen a protein deficiency here in the States? And they'll all say no, because the RDA recommends way over what we need.
Yeah.
And so, animal products actually tax the kidneys. We have so much renal failure and dialysis in the United States, and most of that's because of these high meat protein diets, animal protein diets.
I think I told you last time my daughter has autoimmune polymyositis.
Yes.
And I know diet is one of the
Yes.
things that are causing a lot of her problems.
Yep, and you've got to stop that inflammation.
Yeah.
And I mean, and this diet, especially a raw foods, vegetable diet, is really good for autoimmune, but it just depends on if the person's digestion can handle it.
Mhm.
Then of course the next is cooking your vegetables.
Yeah.
So protein, toxicity, energy, basic, okay, here are the basic daily supplements. B12, and I tell you how much, and methyl for people with GI issues. Vitamin D, I take 10,000 IUs a day. During this COVID, I have really bumped up my vitamin D. DHA, EPA, algae derived, and I have in here, I have all these supplements, I just pulled them. Kelp iodine, zinc, quercetin, and vitamin C, that's going to be, of course, for COVID. And, but I mean, it's to keep you from getting the flu or anything. And then transitioning, I talk about, then that we'll be dealing with later. And then Dr. Fuhrman's daily essential G-bombs that you should get: greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds every day in your diet. And then Dr. Greger's daily dozen, which you can download on your phone app. And you can even check off, so you can keep track of what you're eating, because in the beginning you do need to check it off, but then later you get where you know what you need to eat every day. You don't have to check it off. But he's got a nice little app that has little boxes that you can check off that you've eaten, 3 little boxes for 3 servings, and you can check it off. So at towards the end of the day, say, oh, I still need to eat this, and I still need to eat this, and then it clears that night, and then it starts all over again the next day. So it helps people to train themselves. So I just went ahead and wrote it out there, and then this tells about me and kind of about gut stuff on the back, and sort of more of my story, which the story's very long. And then it has my information, because I do coaching, so I help people, and I don't charge. I do donations. If somebody wants to make a donation, they can make a donation on my website. But I make this available to help people, because I think that there shouldn't be any charge to teach people how to live just according to the way we're designed. So is it 3?
Quarter till.
It's 1:45. Oh, I guess, okay. So let's do questions.
That's almost 3. 2:50.
So doing this would be definitely great for an autoimmune program.
Yes.
But if I can get her to do it, she doesn't like vegetables.
And that's why she's in the shade stick.
That's exactly right.
Well, some people are. I mean, when I was with Dr. Fuhrman, there were some people that vegetables literally make them gag.
Mm-hmm.
And this is of course a mental thing.
Yeah.
It probably goes back to childhood and so forth. But nevertheless, you got to help them. So some people have got where they'll blend things, and they'll blend it with fruit, so it's sweet. So go ahead and put your vegetables in there. Go ahead and put some greens in there. Put some zucchini in there. Put half a cup of beans in there, and then put all your fruit in there so that it's sweet. And just start drinking their food.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Will she eat beans?
Yeah,
Like,
green beans, you mean?
or like pinto beans, or red beans, or black beans?
I don't know.
Well, because you do need to get those. Those are
If you
super
put
food.
it all in a blender.
But if you can do it in the blender, and like
Yeah.
half a cup of like navy beans or something, just canned, no
Uh-huh.
salt, organic canned navy beans in there with greens and berries, and try to add maybe a little tomato and some different vegetables in there. Cauliflower doesn't have much taste.
Right.
And you just put a little bit in there. You don't have to put a whole lot.
Yeah.
And just start that way. And so what happens is they do end up acquiring a taste, because the way we're designed is no matter where because we had to adapt to our environment. And in order for us to adapt to our environment, we had to acquire a taste for the food that's in that environment.
Right.
So when you eat whatever you eat over and over again becomes a preferred food. So if she starts with the blending, it will start to become more of a preferred food for
Yeah,
her.
right.
And that would be the way to start with somebody who just doesn't like vegetables.
That's what happened to me, though. I started eating things I never
Yes.
ate along. Now I just love them.
Right.
It's so good. It tastes so much different.
That's how we're wired.
Yeah.
Or else we would have starved.
Yeah.
A lot of people seem to have successfully adapted to Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A.
Yes, I mean, there are a lot of children, very young children, that don't like meat. I mean, you know, because I don't think that humans naturally like meat. I think but they start giving you that Gerber's little potted chicken, and
Right.
and your mother keeps shoving it in your mouth, and you don't want it, you spit it out, and she keeps shoving it in and mixes it with a little butternut squash and shoves it in, and finally you adapt to it.
Yeah, you do. Your taste changes. Except since I had COVID.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. And the taste isn't the same. Some things I can't tell the taste. So, I don't know. But that's frustrating. But I eat them anyway.
Yes.
Because I remember what
Yes,
it tastes
yes.
like. And keep hoping that it'll blend.
How long ago did you have it?
I had the beginning of last year. Beginning of this year. The end of last year a little bit. Yeah.
Well, perhaps try
Really
this,
sick.
because you're going to give your body everything it needs
I
to
do
heal
eat-
itself.
Yeah, I eat the right things. It's just